In the final years of World War II, the battlefields of Europe were dominated by steel monsters. German tanks, from the swift Panzer IV to the feared Tiger, had become symbols of unstoppable power. Across the war-torn landscapes of France, Belgium, and the Ardennes, American soldiers found themselves face-to-face with armored beasts that their rifles and machine guns could barely scratch. The U.S. Army relied on the bazooka, an early innovation in infantry anti-tank warfare. It had served well in North Africa and during the Normandy landings, but by 1944, its limitations were painfully clear. German engineers had thickened the armor of their tanks, and the bazooka's small rocket often failed to penetrate. American soldiers had to wait until tanks came dangerously close before firing, exposing themselves to machine gun fire and shrapnel. Meanwhile, the German infantry wielded a fearsome weapon of their own, the Panzerfaust. It was simple, disposable, and devastating. A single soldier could carry several of them, firing and discarding each tube after use. Its warhead could blast through Allied armor like paper, but its range was pitiful. Beyond 100 meters, accuracy dropped sharply. German troops often had to ambush tanks from point-blank range, a suicidal act in open terrain. Both sides knew they needed something better. Something light enough for foot soldiers to carry, but powerful enough to threaten the heaviest of tanks. From the laboratories of American ordnance came a radical idea, a gun that wouldn't kick back. A recoilless rifle. It was a weapon that defied common sense. For centuries, every gun fired a projectile one way and recoiled the other. That recoil was the cost of power. But American scientists realized that by venting some of the explosive gases backward, they could cancel most of the recoil. The result was a weapon that fired like artillery but could be carried like a rifle. The result of that breakthrough was the M18 57mm recoilless rifle. When it was first tested, soldiers were stunned. The weapon barely moved when fired. There was no shoulder-breaking kick, no heavy mount needed, no loud mechanical crash. Just a thunderous burst and a flash of exhaust from the rear vent. The round flew fast, flat, and accurate. At only 45 pounds, the M18 could be carried by a single man or mounted on a light tripod. Its ammunition came in simple metal shells, high explosive, anti-tank, and armor-piercing. When the 57mm heat round hit its target, the focused jet of molten metal could pierce up to 90 millimeters of steel. That was enough to cripple or destroy most German tanks from the side or rear. But what truly set it apart was its reach. The M18 could engage targets up to 400 meters away, 4 times the range of the Panzerfaust. German troops were shocked when American infantry began hitting armor and bunkers from distances they had never considered possible. Reports from the front described the weapon's impact vividly. Tank crews found themselves under accurate fire from unseen positions. Small infantry units could suddenly halt an armored advance without waiting for tank support or artillery. The psychological effect was enormous. For German soldiers accustomed to dominating ground battles with their tanks, the M18 was an unwelcome surprise. It wasn't as powerful as a full-sized anti-tank gun, but it was mobile, fast, and everywhere. American paratroopers, infantrymen, and even light vehicle crews began carrying it into battle. It became a game-changer in mountain fighting, city streets, and dense forests where heavier guns couldn't maneuver. The Germans, on the other hand, had no direct equivalent. Their Panzerfaust was cheaper and more plentiful, but its short range forced suicidal tactics. Their Panzerschreck had longer reach but was heavy, cumbersome, and produced a blinding backblast that revealed the shooter's position. When German intelligence first examined captured M18s, they were impressed. Its compact design, smooth performance, and range advantage stood out. One report described it as a remarkable balance of engineering simplicity and battlefield practicality. They understood immediately that it gave American infantry a critical tactical edge. For the U.S. Army, the M18 represented more than just another anti-tank weapon. It was proof that innovation could overcome brute strength. As Allied forces pushed deeper into German-held territory, the M18 became a silent ally of advancing troops. breaking open fortifications, destroying pillboxes, and countering enemy armor before it reached striking distance. By the spring of 1945, the M18 recoilless rifle had earned a formidable reputation. It was praised not only for its effectiveness but also for its psychological effect. The very knowledge that American infantry could now engage armor from several hundred meters away changed how both sides approached the fight. It marked a turning point in infantry warfare when man-portable firepower began to rival the dominance of tanks. And though the war was nearing its end, the M18 was only the beginning. It would go on to shape the weapons of future conflicts, from Korea to Vietnam. But in 1945, for the soldiers of the Wehrmacht who first faced it, the M18 was nothing short of shocking, a lightweight rifle that challenged the tank's throne. As the M18 57mm recoilless rifle entered service, it was deployed first in small numbers to select American units. These were often airborne and mountain troops, soldiers who valued mobility above all else. The weapon's light weight and versatility made it a natural fit for their operations. In Europe, the first battlefield reports came from the final months of 1944 and the beginning of 1945. American infantry units operating in the rugged hills of Italy and the forests of Germany began, carrying the M18 into combat. They discovered that it wasn't just an anti-tank gun, it was a multi-purpose weapon capable of breaking bunkers, knocking out machine gun nests, and blasting through enemy fortifications. Soldiers praised it for being accurate and easy to handle. The weapon's low recoil meant even inexperienced gunners could maintain precision after repeated shots. A well-trained crew could fire, reload, and reposition within seconds. To the men on the ground, this was liberation from dependence on heavier support. Before the M18, infantrymen had to call for artillery or tanks to deal with strong points. Now, with a recoilless rifle in their squad, they could handle most threats on their own. But the weapon also came with its share of warnings. The M18's unique design vented explosive gases backward with incredible force, creating a deadly backblast zone behind the gun. Any soldier standing in that cone risked severe burns or death. Firing it inside enclosed spaces such as buildings or caves was suicidal. Troops quickly learned to respect the weapon's fiery exhaust. Despite these dangers, soldiers fell in love with it. In the chaos of battle, its roar became a symbol of hope. A single M18 could stop an enemy counterattack dead in its tracks. German forces encountered the weapon for the first time during late engagements on the Western Front. In towns like Remagen, Cologne, and along the Siegfried Line, American troops used the M18 to destroy armored cars, half-tracks, and bunkers. Reports from German tank units described sudden explosions from long distances, far beyond the reach of Panzerfaust teams. At first, they assumed they were under artillery fire. But when captured soldiers mentioned a new shoulder-fired gun that produced little recoil, German officers realized they were facing something entirely new. Captured examples of the M18 were sent to weapons testing grounds in Germany. Engineers examined its light aluminum parts, perforated breech and venting system. They recognized its brilliance immediately. The concept wasn't unknown to them. Germany had experimented with recoilless designs like the LG-40 and LG-42 during the war, but their versions were larger, heavier, and complex. The American M18 achieved the same principle with far greater efficiency. Where the German Panzerfaust was cheap and disposable, the M18 was reusable and precise. Where the Panzerschreck was powerful but clumsy, the M18 was agile and fast. The contrast was striking. The weapon's effectiveness wasn't limited to armor. In urban combat, where tanks were vulnerable and movement was restricted, the M18 was devastating. A single HE round could turn an entire enemy position into rubble. Walls collapsed, bunkers burst open, and machine gun crews were silenced in seconds. In one account from the 17th Airborne Division, soldiers described using the M18 during the push toward the Rhine. They fired across a field at a German self-propelled gun, scoring a direct hit from over 300 meters away. The vehicle erupted in flames and the stunned survivors scattered. The American infantry, once pinned down, advanced with renewed confidence. Stories like these spread quickly across the front. The M18 gained a reputation as the tank killer's friend. Soldiers nicknamed it the shoulder cannon because of its powerful blast and the way it felt to fire: light, direct, and deadly. For the Germans, the shock came not only from the weapon's range, but also from how it changed American infantry tactics. Instead of waiting for tanks to clear the path, small infantry units could now take the initiative. They began moving faster, hitting harder, and breaking through defenses once thought impenetrable. The M18 also found use against field fortifications that once required artillery bombardment. Its versatility allowed commanders to deploy it in nearly any environment: forests, hills, cities, or open fields. And with the front lines constantly shifting, mobility was everything. But the weapon wasn't perfect. Against the heaviest German armor, like the Tiger or Königstiger, the M18's 57mm round struggled to penetrate frontal armor. Crews were trained to aim for weaker spots: the sides, rear, or even tracks. Coordination and timing were critical. Infantry units learned to ambush tanks from hidden positions, firing in teams to maximize damage. Still, what the M18 lacked in sheer power, it made up for in precision and adaptability. It allowed ordinary infantry to challenge enemy armor with confidence. By early 1945, German intelligence officers concluded that the M18 gave the U.S. Army a clear tactical advantage. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement of industrial and scientific capability. The weapon's combination of lightness, range, and speed represented a new kind of warfare, one that prioritized mobility and flexibility over sheer firepower. To many German officers, this was alarming. They had built their war machine around heavy armor, massive guns, and overwhelming force. Now, a small, portable weapon was undermining that doctrine. As one captured German report, later translated by Allied forces, put it, "This American weapon grants infantry the firepower of light artillery without the burden of weight or recoil. It is as if every squad carries its own gun battery." The M18 had shifted the balance on the battlefield, not through size or cost, but through ingenuity. By the time the war in Europe was drawing to a close, thousands of M18s had been produced and distributed. They had served in Italy, France, Belgium, and Germany itself. In the Pacific theater, they were also proving invaluable against Japanese fortifications and light tanks. But as Germany prepared for its final stand, one truth was clear: the M18 Recoilless Rifle had stunned them. It was a weapon that broke the rules of traditional warfare, a rifle that behaved like artillery, a cannon that could be carried on a man's shoulder. And for the soldiers who faced its blast, it marked the dawn of a terrifying new era in infantry firepower. When Germany finally collapsed in May 1945, the world took stock of the weapons that had shaped the conflict. Among them, the M18 57mm recoilless rifle stood as one of the most innovative designs of the war's final phase. It hadn't existed long enough to change the outcome of World War II, but it had shown a glimpse of warfare's future. For the American military, the M18 was not just another anti-tank gun. It was a technological milestone, a bridge between the era of bulky artillery and the modern age of portable firepower. Soldiers who had used it in Europe returned home singing its praises. They admired its simplicity, its reliability, and its versatility. The weapon proved to be more than a tank killer. In the dense jungles and island caves of the Pacific, it became a bunker-busting tool of choice. U.S. Marines found that its high-explosive shells could obliterate Japanese pillboxes and cave entrances from safe distances. It performed roles that no single infantry weapon had handled before. When American military analysts reviewed its performance, they realized they had stumbled upon a revolutionary idea. The M18 had demonstrated that firepower no longer had to be tied to weight. Infantrymen could now deliver destructive force that once required a truck, a gun carriage, or a crew of 6. Meanwhile, Captured German scientists and engineers who examined the weapon after the war admitted their astonishment. Many had worked on the Panzerfaust or larger recoilless projects, but none had imagined that such efficiency could come from a shoulder-fired gun. They acknowledged that while the Panzerfaust was simple and cheap, it was no match for the M18's combination of range, precision, and reusability. One German ordnance officer, after testing the weapon in captivity, remarked, "It is a soldier's cannon, light, strong, and as accurate as our artillery. If we had possessed this, the war in the West would have been far more costly for the enemy." That statement summarized the respect, and perhaps envy, that the M18 inspired among the defeated. But even in victory, the Americans weren't satisfied. Engineers immediately began working on improvements. Larger versions followed, like the M20 75mm recoilless rifle and later the M40 106mm, each designed to give infantrymen more firepower without sacrificing mobility. The M18 had opened the door, and what followed would redefine combat for the next generation. In the post-war years, the M18 found a second life. It was used by U.S. forces during the Korean War, where it once again proved its worth against North Korean and Chinese tanks. Soldiers in Korea praised its accuracy and ease of use, though by then it was slowly being replaced by more powerful successors. Still, the M18's role in shaping battlefield tactics was undeniable. For many nations rebuilding their armies after World War II, the concept of the recoilless rifle became irresistible. Dozens of countries copied, modified, or licensed the design. The principle of venting gases backward to cancel recoil became a foundation for countless new weapons, from light anti-tank guns to portable artillery systems. Even as guided missiles began to appear in the 1950s, the recoilless rifle remained relevant. It was cheap, dependable, and deadly. In the hands of well-trained soldiers, it could still destroy tanks, trucks, and fortifications. The M18, though small, had started a revolution in how infantry thought about firepower. Its success also revealed something deeper about American engineering during World War II. The M18 represented a mindset, a willingness to experiment, to think beyond convention, and to prioritize practicality over perfection. It wasn't the most powerful weapon of the war, nor the most famous, but it was one of the smartest. And for the German soldiers who first faced it, it was an unpleasant surprise. They were used to fighting American tanks and artillery at predictable ranges. But suddenly, from beyond 300 meters, shells began striking their vehicles with pinpoint accuracy. The weapon's quiet signature and deadly effect made it hard to locate. Panzer crews who survived those encounters often recalled the confusion. They couldn't understand how infantry could engage them from so far away. They suspected hidden artillery, but there were no telltale recoil flashes or muzzle blasts. Only later did they realize it was a man-portable rifle, something they had thought impossible. In that moment of confusion and shock, the M18 earned its reputation. It didn't destroy thousands of tanks, and it didn't turn the tide of war single-handedly. But its psychological impact on both sides was profound. It signaled the dawn of a new era, where innovation mattered as much as industrial power, where ideas could be as lethal as guns. The Panzerfaust had represented the brute simplicity of desperation, a weapon of last defense, fired by anyone, even untrained youths. The M18, in contrast, represented precision and control, designed for professional soldiers who could harness technology to win battles intelligently. The contrast between the two told the story of how warfare itself was changing. As the years passed, historians would look back on the M18 not as the ultimate weapon of World War II, but as the spark of a transformation. It showed that infantry could once again play a decisive role in armored warfare. It paved the way for portable missile systems like the bazooka's descendants, the M72 Law, the Carl Gustaf, and eventually, the Javelin. Each of these modern weapons owes something to that first American recoilless rifle, the M18. And though time has faded its fame, the M18's legacy remains etched in military history. It symbolized a turning point when mobility, precision, and science triumphed over brute force. For the German army, which had prided itself on technological superiority, the discovery that American infantry now carried a shoulder-fired weapon capable of outranging their Panzerfaust was deeply unsettling. It shattered the illusion that they alone mastered innovation. For the soldiers who fired it, the M18 was a badge of confidence. For the soldiers who faced it, it was a symbol of shock and fear. In the end, that's what made it legendary. A weapon so light, so simple, and yet so revolutionary that it forever changed how wars would be fought. The M18 Recoilless Rifle. The gun that recoiled against nothing, but shocked the world with everything.